Perfect. Hey guys, thanks for joining. Excited to see all these amazing faces next to each other. So we'll get started a couple minutes after 2:30 ET. Thank you guys for waiting. I'm gonna start with just a couple housekeeping things. And so just for those of you that are joining, again, thank you. Super excited to share the experiences of these three awesome sales managers. We're going to talk about the transition from IC to manager. And so given that they've all done the transition, they'll have some great tidbits to share. Those housekeeping notes for the group. So one, we do have a chat and we encourage you to use it. So please do. Obviously an opportunity to learn from each other as well as the panelists. And then two, there is a separate Q&A section. So if you have questions that you would like to ask the panelists, which we will definitely have time for today, drop them in there so they don't get lost in the chat. So as we're getting started, we're actually going to go live with a poll to have a sense for who's in this session. I did take a look at the attendees list, and it's a good mix of ICs and managers, but we'll be dropping a poll in there and would love to have everyone share a bit for what their current role is. And then after you've dropped that in, would also love some comments in the chat about what are your biggest challenges for 2023. So some ones we've heard are driving up win rates, creating quality pipeline, people management concerns, et cetera, but would love folks to drop a couple in the chat too. So let's see. Awesome. Okay, nice. So good mix of ICs and sales managers. Could have put money on that, so that kind of checks out. Okay. Build your gem strategy. Thank you, Monique. Cool. All right, well, let's get started with some intros then. Feel free to continue to use the poll in the chat, but we'll kick things off. A quick introduction from myself, and then I'll pass it to our panelists. I'm Mary. I'm leading customer success and growth at Champify. And my experience is actually mostly in fintech. I was at Plaid for a while doing customer success. Eleanor, you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Eleanor Dorfman. I lead the AE function at Retool. I was previously at a company called Segment that was acquired by Twilio, where I actually did customer success, operations, renewals, expansions, and new business teams. Did a few different functions there, and a company called Clever before then, and excited to be here.
Awesome. Meredith, you want to go second, and then we can do Becca.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Meredith Chandler. I'm currently a manager at Captivate IQ, which is a commissions software tool, which I know we all love our commissions since we're all in sales here. So managed there, and I've gone from IC to manager at 2 companies previously. So really excited to share some tips and tricks on anyone looking to make a similar move.
Awesome. And fun fact, I once tried to hire Meredith, but she broke my heart. I'm Becca Lindquist. I'm the VP of Sales at DBT Labs. We are a SaaS product in the data space. I've been here for about 2.5 years leading the sales organization. And prior to that, I was rep number 2 at a company called Heap. Was there for about 5 years. Made the transition from rep to manager there, and helped build that business. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, first one's for you, Becca. So to kick things off, can you share what the biggest mistake you made early in your sales management career and what advice you'd give for leaders to avoid having that happen?
Oh, wow. Starting with a spicy one. Look, I think it's not just one mistake that you make. I think I fell victim to a lot of the common ones, right? Investing too much time in your underperforming reps, erring on the side of doing too much for your reps or super repping, trying to focus on too many things. If I could go back and tell myself to do one thing differently, though, I think there's a sense of I just maybe wasn't human enough, right? I thought that leadership was all about putting on a brave face, trying to have the right answers, putting a bunch of structure around things. And for the first 6 months, it felt like it wasn't quite clicking for me, or that I was like forcing it. And finally, I took a step back and I said, well, hang on. My team is like, I care deeply about these people. And if I come at it from the angle of, hey, I'm trying to help you buy X, Y, Z, it became a lot more natural. And I think that's when I really found my groove. So, I might hear from some of my team about still not being human enough, right? Not celebrating the wins enough. But I think that's what it comes down to at the end of the day is if you're a human and you recognize that the people on your team are humans and you genuinely care about them, that's the best advice that I'd give to myself 5-6 years ago to make that transition easier. I don't know, Meredith, if you have any other ideas there.
Yeah, I would go off of that. And also I'm seeing in the chat kind of how to balance between micromanaging and managing. And you mentioned being a super rep. And it's so hard in hindsight. It is just so hard from being the number one rep. Becca mentioned being the number two rep and just having success, knowing what success looks like, and then seeing other people do it and not think, why aren't you doing it my way? Like, I know how to do it my way. And so I think, as Becca says, just humanizing it and recognizing and appreciating that the team has other ways of doing things and just kind of backing off and seeing how they want to do it and encouraging and uplifting them to see success, how they see it, and also just supporting them with our learnings, but also allowing them to make it their own. But it's so much easier said than done, just going from rep to manager. But yeah, I would kind of iterate that.
Awesome. Well, the second one is for you, Meredith. What's a piece of sale advice that most people give or agree with that you don't think is true?
Ooh, this is another spicy hot topic because I will agree with the fact that people buy from people and emotional buying and selling is definitely a thing. But I think there is a lot of fluff around building rapport. And I really cringe when people open up a call with, how's the weather in XYZ city? Or I just think, we are dynamic individuals and you're speaking to dynamic individuals and you can build rapport so many different ways. And you can also build rapport by just respecting people's time and getting down to business. You do not need to spend 5 minutes talking about their sports team, their hometown, the weather, or what they did for the weekend. You could just spend those 5 or 10 minutes respecting their time, setting an agenda, and moving them through your sales cycle. But if you disagree, I'd love to hear it in the chat. Maybe you've got an amazing opener that just 10 out of 10 times gets them to sign on the first call. Let me know.
It's interesting that you bring that up. So I follow a gentleman, a sales trainer and a fantastic sales leader. His name's Scott Davis. And he turned me on to a sales trainer on LinkedIn. I'll see if I can find her the exact post that she created on this topic, but she had the same feedback. She was like, hey, the first 5 minutes, you don't care what the weather's like in New York City, right? I don't really most of the time care what the weather is like wherever you might be, but building rapport is all about shared values and what you value as a person and kind of how I can help you get where you need to be. I'll see if I can find it. I think the example she used was she sold to real estate agents, or one of the people that she trained sold to real estate agents. And when it clicked for him about rapport was when he realized that the person that was on the other end of the phone was a single parent providing for their family, and his tool can genuinely help that person do that better. And that's when it clicked for him. He was like, I care about family. I'm a father too, and what I'm doing is helping you. We have this shared value of family. I'll see if I can find it, but yeah, I generally agree with you, Meredith. Rapport building shouldn't be about the weather.
It should also just be about, to me, it's just doing what you say you're going to do. Like rapport building is about trust. And if you are consistent with the agenda, you send a follow-up, you say you're going to do something, you immediately do it. Like to me, rapport is every interaction is an opportunity to build trust. And trust is the most important component in rapport. And when people will buy from you again, when they switch companies, it's because you've established that trust, not because I think trust is a shared value too. I really like Becca's point there. So basically, Meredith, strongly agree.
Awesome. Eleanor, question for you. What advice do you have for a manager who's just been promoted and is now managing their prior peers, and how to navigate that situation?
There's a great article about this. I have to find that. When I was in that situation, I read cover to cover as people were quitting left and right. I think it's just a really hard transition, and going in knowing this is a really hard transition, and the only thing I can do, like, no one's going to nail this. I can just make this as good as possible. I have to find this article because it was so good. It's really hard. And it's about not overcompensating and trying to do everything for people because you feel guilty. And also, I think owning that you got the promotion, you deserve it, you earn it, and have honest conversations with people, and the trust you had as peers usually carries through. But knowing, I think being not like, some people will leave. They might have been up for the job and not gotten it. Some people might not, but work with your manager to have a lot of close support, because being a first-time manager, especially with recent peers, is really, really hard. So make sure you have your own support network in place, both new peers at your company as well as your manager. Be really honest with folks and say, this is uncomfortable. I know it's uncomfortable. Tell me what will make you more comfortable, and how can we go through this transition together, and get their guidance. And then don't overcompensate because you feel guilty or uncomfortable, and fall into the trap Becca talked about before of being a super rep, or of micromanaging, or of not managing closely enough. But like, build your support network, because that's going to get you through the first 6 months, which are really uncomfortable, and then you find your groove. So I guess I would say it's managing your own expectations on what it's going to be like, and treating yourself with a little grace, knowing you're going to make a lot of mistakes while you're learning, and you're just doing the best you can.
It's interesting that you bring that up, managing your peers. I have one of the people on my team. I moved him from an IC to leading a team about 18 months ago. And one of the ways that it clicked for me that I knew that he was ready was he had already started doing the coaching and the development. And so it became really easy when we opened up the role for me to say, man, that person's already been doing it, right? Because think about the first thing that your boss would do if you're up for a promotion and there's a frontline manager role open. They're probably going to ask themselves, all right, I've got 5 people on that team. How many of them are going to quit if I promote this person? If they go to those people and those people say, damn, I'd be so excited to work for this person. I'd be thrilled. I'd be so excited. It makes it a no-brainer, right? So I think there's also a portion where you can set yourself up for that job by going and building internal advocates and champions for yourself.
Becca, that ties into a question that I had that I wanted to ask, which is, what recommendations do you have to then be promoted into a management role for the ICs that are on the call? What do you think is important? I hear the building trust within your team. What else comes to mind when you think about making that transition?
I think we're treating a lot of this transition as inevitable. I think it's also important to acknowledge, you can have a very fulfilling, long, successful career as an IC. And moving into a manager role is not the only way to get more responsibility, or to build your brand internally, or to make more money, whatever it is that you're trying to do. That's not the only way to do it. And so I think first it's taking a step back and saying, okay, is this the right role for me first? And then if it is, man, what's keeping you from starting to do it? What's keeping you from setting up, peer calls where you listen to each other's gong calls and you give each other feedback? What's keeping you from setting up a deal review and saying, hey, folks, I've got this big deal. It's the most critical deal of my quarter. I could really use some help poking holes, right? MedPick, what am I missing? What can I beef up? Help me figure out where my weaknesses are. I think that builds some trust and gets other people to open up. If you go first, I'll tell you what, your teammate next week probably wants to go next, and you can help them, right? I think that's one way to get better. there's a lot of sales management books out there, but I think a lot of it is building trust with the people that you're going to manage.
And to your point, I think it's knowing why you want to be a manager and what you want to get out of the experience. And I think when you have the right expectations coming into when you have the right when you know what you're doing, you know how to set yourself up for it because you know what you're trying to achieve and what skills you're trying to build and why. And when you can have that conversation internally with your manager, that makes all of that a lot easier. And I think when it isn't because it's the next step in my career, it's because I'm so motivated by this coaching I've been doing for my team, or I want to be a CRO and here's why. And I know these are the skills I need to learn to get there. But I think it's having the why is really, really critical because the rest of it sort of flows from that. And it's important to be clear on that why, because it can be a tough transition if you're doing it for the wrong reasons or going to it with the wrong expectations.
I think once you've defined your why, you also need to be very vocal. I hate to sound cliche, but the squeaky wheel does get the oil. If you think about your manager or your manager's manager, they might be working with 5, 6, 7 reps, and then their managers may be overseeing a much larger team. They're not always thinking about who's up for promotion next and when. So once you figure out your why, vocalize it to your manager, ask them, how else can I show that I want this? I've already started doing these things like Becca and Eleanor mentioned. I've already started coaching people. I'm happy to do that, but how else can I show that I want this role? And how can I prepare now so that when I step into the role, I've had practice and I know how to do it.
There's also a question in the chat I wanted to address about the top ICs turning into a manager. I never think about that actually, just personally in terms of losing their revenue contribution. We actually just made one of my top ICs into a manager, and I was thrilled because the why was I get the most energy when I'm helping the team. I want to, I have a vision for how I think we can do this well, and I think I can help other people get there. The why was all about helping other people, and I was like, I get to take this individual's everything that makes them great and federate it out to 5 or 6 or 7 people. That's amazing. I never think about it in terms of the lost revenue. If it's because of what motivates them, I just think what a gift. I'm so excited to help find that path for you.
Yeah, on our team, we use the term force multiplier. So you're taking one top producing rep, and when you promote them into manager, you're essentially having them teach 5, 6 reps how to also be a top rep. So instead of one, the company really sees it as 6 top reps. So I'd agree with Eleanor. I don't view of it as losing revenue, but gaining more. Yeah,
if it's someone who's losing revenue, it's a little short-sighted. Although you do miss it the first quarter that they've moved, and then you feel comfortable about it again. But that first quarter is rough.
Cool. I'm gonna grab another question from the chat. Beck, I'll pass it to you. From Brian, as an IC, it's easy to measure your success because quota attainment is simple math. Is it the same as a frontline sales manager? How do you think about measuring success in a new manager or as a new manager?
Thanks for that tee up, Brian. How do you determine whether a new frontline sales manager is doing a good job? So a couple things here. It's not going to be immediately, they're not going to join day one and you're going to say, oh yeah, they're doing all the right things, right? You have to give it maybe a quarter, because here are the things that I look at. One, have they earned the respect of their team? So does their team go to them for the day-to-day questions, needs, deal strategy, coaching, development? Are they on the calls? Are they in the boat with the team, right? The second thing, are they focusing on the right things with their teams, and are they disciplined in their approach? I'll give 2 examples of 2 managers that are in my org right now. One was recently made the transition from IC to manager, a big internal promotion culture here at DBT. And that person's team's forecast and Salesforce hygiene is spotless. I can tell that there's a lot of discipline and a lot of focus going into that. That might not sound exciting for the ICs on the call, but man, for managers, that is. I saw Eleanor's reaction.
I really do.
Right. So that's one example. The second example I'll give, I recently hired in a manager from the outside, and one of the things that they did was they took what we currently did and they moved the ball forward in terms of pipeline generation. So it's not just, hey, you need to generate this much pipeline, or you need to be doing PG, right? It's dashboards, it's guidance, it's plays on here's how you go and do the thing, right? So are they focused on the right things, and are they disciplined in their approach? The third thing, how are they working with their peers across the sales org and outside of the org, right? Your partners are your field marketing point of contact, your partner point of contact, your technical counterpart if you're selling a very technical product. And then the fourth is, how do they handle their first conflict? It's easy to be a good leader when everything's going really well. I think everybody recognizes the macro environment that we're in right now, and that things might not be going well for a lot of businesses. What does it look like for this person to put their first rep on a plan? What does it look like when they're conflicting with prioritizing the right events with their partners, managing tricky personalities on their team and other teams, right? So those are the things. Have they earned the respect? Are they focusing on the right things? How are they doing with their peers? How are they handling their first conflict? It's not all just about the numbers and the forecast.
I do think forecasting accuracy, though. So to the point of the clean pipeline, it's closest to the pin for me. And I'm like, if you are forecasting accurately and you're enabling me to know that when you do a forecast, you know what's going on in your business. Like, you're an owner of that business and you know what's going on. You know how to call it. You know where the pipeline is or isn't coming from. And I can roll that up with confidence. Like, that's what gives me a lot of trust. And then I actually thought what Becca said was dead on, the focusing on the right things. I think the thing I look for is, do you recognize what is or isn't in your control? And so are you focusing on the things that you know are in your control? Like, there's a lot of stuff in the macro environment that's outside of your control. So what are you doing to account for that? How are you adapting your process? How are you bringing in EBs earlier? How are you thinking about selling to finance in a way you never had to do before? And so I think that's the adaptability piece I also look to see how folks are doing. Mary, I think you're muted.
Thank you. Okay, another question from the chat for Meredith. I'm going to pass it to you from Amanda. Sometimes there are top performing reps who don't make good leaders and mid performing reps who would make great leaders. What would your advice be for both of those people?
Ooh, okay. I'm just reading it here. What would your advice be? Well, going back to what we talked about earlier, right? So what is your reasoning for, if you're an IC wanting to get into management? So just like Becca said, figuring out your why. And then if you get into management, trying to figure out what success looks like, right? So it's not just hitting your number as a manager, as we've kind of touched on, and it's going to be really different company to company, org to org. So does success look like hitting your number, exceeding your number? Does it look like promoting X amount of people? Does it look like moving X amount of projects forward throughout the org? So I think to be successful, you first have to understand what success looks like for your boss and your boss's boss and the organization as a whole. And then you need to figure out how to benchmark yourself against those success metrics, or have somebody, probably your boss, evaluate you against those success criteria. And hopefully these are ongoing discussions on where you are in those metrics and getting you to a place of success. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Sometimes top ICs become managers and it doesn't work out, or a lot of the times they just miss selling, right? It can go either way. So that would be my advice for that. And then the second part of the question is, there are top performers who don't make good leaders and mid-performing reps who would make great leaders. In the second scenario, for reps who would make great leaders that aren't maybe hitting their numbers, what did you say? Mid-performing reps. Again, just work with your boss on what success would look like, because Sometimes those who aren't at the top can still be great managers as well, and they're a completely different set of skills. It's kind of wild, actually, how frequently we promote top ICs and put them in a manager seat with little to no training, completely different skill set, and we expect them to be successful right away. So sorry, I just lost my train of thought there. Hopefully that helps.
I think there's a part of it where it's like with any promotion, right? Let's say you're an SDR and you want to be promoted to a commercial rep. What's the barrier to entry? The barrier to entry is hitting your number. Like if you're not hitting your number, you're not going to get promoted. That's the bottom line. I think if you're the top rep, you're at 100, 150, 250% of your number, great. I think it's important to recognize like there is a bar and you got to clear that bar in order to even be eligible or considered.
I do think it comes back to the why, like the top reps, how do they get to their number is a thing I looked at a lot. Like, do they get to their number by doing incredible team selling and creative pipe gen and excellent champion cultivation and or nav and multi-threading? And did they get there with the skill sets that make you a good manager? Or did they get there because they were super cutthroat and knew how to navigate the ROEs and came out on the right side of every split? They might be the top rep, but they are not going to make a good manager. So I think that the key there is how you got there versus where you ended up in terms of attainment and performance.
One from Sam in the chat, Eleanor, I'll frame this for you. Can you elaborate on how you are driving motivation during these unusual and uncertain times?
It's really hard. It is. I declared good news only week last week. I don't know if that helped or not. I think it is being really honest about what's going on. It's being really realistic with people and setting reasonable goals and still stretch goals because you still have an obligation to your company and to the board. It's finding new ways to celebrate. It's finding ways to laugh about how hard things are. It's creating a lot of opportunities for connection with the team. I think building community is really hard right now. And I think it is recognizing that the definition of a win changed and you made sure that you recognize people, you acknowledge how hard it is, and you celebrate the things that might have just been commonplace 6 months ago and now are a huge achievement. So I think it is just acknowledging how hard it is, being so like recognizing how much work everyone is putting in and how hard it is right now and celebrating that and being very vocal about that. Finding opportunities for connection with the team. We've been doing a lot of superlatives in lieu of other things, like that contract we renewed that we know won't renew again next year and things like that. And just like recognizing again that everyone's really human and it's really hard right now. And it's hard for everyone up and down the chain, and just showing people the recognition and knowing that the goalpost is changing for folks and you're doing all you can to support them. But still holding everyone to a high standard. And I think that's the key, is not just saying, like, my thing with the economy and the way it is right now is I'm like, no one can hide anymore. Like, you are the product of your work. There's only 2 types of luck right now. There's bad luck and there's very bad luck. But people are still being successful because the people who are great at their job are just far and away running with it right now. And there's still people doing really incredible work. And so I think it's continuing to hold them to a high standard because you've built an amazing team, and then being really honest about the realities and celebrating every type of win.
Man, big +1 to that. The job of a manager is to inspire, right? It's really easy. Man, I see the news, and it can be easy to fall into a spiral. Your job as a manager, your job as a manager is to keep the team motivated, right? I think celebrating the small wins of like, hey, who got some, man, we had a rep start last week. He's got 4 outbound meetings already scheduled. It's something to celebrate, right? I think it's sitting down and showing people, hey, there still is a path, right? Especially in sales, like you can fall one of 2 ways when you're trying to close a deal. What deals do we need to win, and let's huddle around those and make sure that we win those. Scott, I'm a big Scott Davis fan. If you don't follow him on LinkedIn, go check him out. but he has this saying, complaints can't roll downhill, right? Your job is to be a little bit of an umbrella for the bad things, and keep your team safe, celebrating the wins.
Well, still, like, I do think that, but the being vulnerable, but you can't act tone deaf. Like, I can't be like, well, we're all just crushing it. It's like, no, we're not. But like, there's a lot of really amazing things still happening, and the definition of crushing it has shifted. And so I think it's I'm like 4 outbound meetings in their first week, put him on a stage. That's amazing. So it's yeah, just totally agree. It's being the force for positivity while not appearing to be completely have blinders on to what's going on.
Awesome. Lots of great questions in the chat. Keep them coming. Another one is, and I'll direct this to you, Becca. How do you manage frustration? Sometimes there might be 2 people who'd qualify for promotion, but only one gets the job. What are your tips to keep your ICs motivated?
That's a tough one. I think part of your job as a leader is to, let's say you've got one spot open and there's 3 people who are interested and 1 person who, maybe they don't have enough experience. Maybe it's too big a jump for them right now. Like, your job as a manager is to help direct them and put them on the projects that will help them get there eventually, even if it's not right now, right? So the first thing is just managing expectations in my mind. In the exact scenario that you're talking about where, hey, you've got 2 people, they're both up for a promotion, you're considering them both, I think it's sitting down and having an honest conversation and creating a kind of a development plan to help them get there. What were the gaps that they need to go and work on? And what is the timeline to actually fill those gaps? Understanding that, a lot of companies aren't growing the way that they were last year, 2 years before, right? So again, being realistic, but saying, hey, this isn't the right thing for the business right now. It might not even be the right thing for you, explaining why, right? I can put you in that role. Maybe you're going to fail out because you don't have these specific skills. Let's work on them together so that the next time that this is up, you're prepared. I think that's the best thing that you can do. I don't know what you think, Eleanor.
No. I mean, this happened recently, and I was like, you're all 3 promoted, but you can't do that. I think it's also I completely agree with Becca. Also, if they're an adult, be like, this is the reality. This is why I made the decision I did. Let me help you understand that. And then it's also skilled up. I think working on those would also like, leadership can mean so many different things. And so then being very intentional, explicit about, here are the other opportunities for leadership I'm going to find you. Go lead this cross-functional initiative. Do you want to own this? Like, let's go have you present in all hands to the entire company. Come present to the executive team and you'll work on that skill. Like, let's find that for you. Do you want to speak at this event we're doing? Let's do that. Do you want to lead this event we're doing? Let's do that. So I think it's make sure they know that they're valued, they're appreciated, and that leadership is many, many different things. It's not just people management. And in fact, some of the most fun parts of leadership are the parts that are not people management. And so finding those opportunities and working on them together. And then I try to do a monthly or quarterly check-in that's very explicit. Where are we in the hiring roadmap? When do we think this is realistic, and sort of consistently manage expectations?
Yeah, I think when there is maybe a skill gap and you've identified the gap and you're managing expectations, it can still be really motivating to see progress on those gaps. So once you've identified it, put a plan together on, okay, on a scale of 1 to 5, you're maybe now on a 3 at this skill. How do we get you to a 5? And what are we going to put in place on a daily or weekly cadence so that you can get to a 4 and then you can get to a 5? Because even just incremental progress is really motivating too.
All right, well, last question, and then we can wrap things up. It's for you, Meredith, but of course, per usual, everyone, please jump in. How did you learn to become a successful sales manager? Was it trainings or advisors or mentors? What allowed you to grow the most? And what helped prepare you?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, it's a very different skill set, and it's kind of wild how, again, they just a lot of companies will take you as an IC, put you in management, completely different skill set, and expect you to knock it out of the park right away. So there's a lot of trial and error there, but I think it comes down to 3 steps. And I touched on it a little bit earlier, but the first step is understanding what success looks like. If you want to be successful, you have to understand how you'll be viewed as successful. So is it hitting your number and nothing else matters? Is it promoting reps? Is it, again, doing special projects or cross collaboration projects that move the needle forward throughout the org? So as a manager, you're not just managing your reps, but something that I think gets overlooked is you're managing up as well. So you're managing your expectations up, but you're also managing laterally as well. So a lot of times we have sales engineers involved, post-sales, customer success. So you need to understand what success looks like for all of those folks, which can be a lot. And sometimes, like Becca said, if you're asking 5 people, what's it like working with Eleanor, what's it like working with Meredith? You want all 5 of those people to give you glowing reviews, not just one department, right? Not just, she or he hit their number all the time. And so once you've identified what success is, it's setting up systems to make you successful in those areas. So if the main focus is you got to hit your number, well, how are you going to do that? Are you going to review pipeline every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday? Are you going to have standing one-on-ones where that time is sacred and your reps get an hour of deal strategy with you? Is it forecasting calls? You really need to have the systems in place on a regular cadence that set you up to hit those success metrics. And I think the last step is self-education. So you can find yourself a mentor. I was grateful enough to have somehow coaxed Becca into mentoring me over the years. She even graciously, just meets up with me from time to time, and I get to pick her brain. But find yourself a mentor or mentors. You can enroll in a first-time management course. There's a lot out there. A company I really like is Campfire. You can pick up a book or 2. I really like Total Ownership by Jocko. It's not a traditional management style book. For that, you have things like First Time Manager. But again, managers and first-time managers, the reality is you just don't receive as much training as a sales rep does. So the sooner that you can own your development, which is what Total Ownership, the book, talks about, the sooner you can control your success too.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap this up, we can also take that question in the chat with our closeout, but would love everyone just quickly say kind of where our panelists can find you if they have any questions after the fact. So again, thank you guys so much for all joining. For myself, so I'm at Mary at champify.io, also available on LinkedIn. And if you want to learn more about Champify, we're working on how you can turn your former customers into a whole new pipeline channel. But check us out at champify.io. So with that, Beck, if you want to go ahead. Oh, and then with the favorite book, if you'd like to add on your favorite book with your closeout. So go ahead.
Sure. Becca Lindquist, and you can find me on LinkedIn. You can just search my name. I'm at DBT Labs. I recognize a couple folks that are tuned in today, Lily, Sarah. It's good to see you both. I try really hard to respond to all sincere LinkedIn messages, but sometimes there's a lot. Favorite book, I think Qualified Sales Leader by John McMahon. If you haven't read it, or it's been a while since you've read it, it's worth a good read. I'd say that's the best one.
I'm a sucker for Qualified Sales Leader as well. So that's my number one. I also am a big believer in Radical Candor, and I feel like that one sort of went out of popularity, and I still love it, especially in this time. I think it's very helpful, the care personaling piece, and also helps you avoid some traps for early management. And then Eleanor Dorfman, you can find me on LinkedIn at Retool. And always happy, like Becca, to whenever folks, I'd love to engage more hiring. So reach out.
I put my books in the chat, but Total Ownership, First Time Manager, and First 90 Days are my book recommendations. You can also find me on LinkedIn And I'm always happy to connect and exchange more resources and tips and tricks, or just pick each other's brains. So let's connect.
Awesome. Well, thank you three for the time. This has been awesome. For anyone that's still tuned in, we are doing a series of these, and we have one coming up in March. So we'll start posting on LinkedIn. But if you enjoyed this, there is more to come. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.